All right, hello again. My name is Cassie Mulliken. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator with Greater Bakersfield Legal Assistance. Thank you for joining us today for the 9th Annual Fair Housing Conference presented by the Fair Housing Law Project with GBLA. This is session 2 of our 4-part virtual conference, More Than Words. We are pleased to have today with us guest speakers Jason Cater, Heather Kimmel, and Iranian Molina Reyes. Each will provide some information about their organization's efforts in working in affordable housing and resources for the community in terms of housing and fair housing opportunities. Please note this session is recorded and we will post this later to our YouTube channel. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speakers and we'll jump right in. A couple housekeeping rules. You are automatically muted as an attendee. Towards the end of the session, we will launch the Q&A, and at that time, you can either type your questions in the chat box, type your question in the question box, or you can raise your hand and I'll be able to unmute you to ask the question. Please find PDF slides of the presentations that you'll see today in the handout section, as well as the program. City of Bakersfield will be added here shortly. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speakers and we'll jump right in. So today we have Heather Kimmel, who is the Assistant Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Kern County. Heather Kimmel is a Bakersfield native who graduated from North High School and then attended Bakersfield College. She spent 6 years as the site supervisor of an after-school program for North of the River Parks and Recreation Department. After the program lost funding, she started her career with homeless veterans, joining the California Veterans Assistance Foundation in 2009. In 2006, Heather left employment with CDAF to become the Assistant Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the County of Kern. It has become Heather's professional goal to offer safe, affordable housing throughout Kern County. To further that goal, Heather is a member of many local and national organizations, including co-chair for Kern County Veterans Stand Down, a proxy for Kern County Network for Children, chair with the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative Housing Committee, lead for Built for Zero movement, a member of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, a member of California Association of Housing Authorities, and a member of the California Apartment Association. Thank you for joining us today, Heather. Next up, we have Jason Cater. Jason is the Principal Planner of the Affordable Housing and Neighborhood Vitality with the City of Bakersfield. Born and raised in Bakersfield, he graduated from Bakersfield Christian High School in 2005 and then went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and received a degree in city planning. Jason's love for his hometown brought him back to Bakersfield with the intentions of getting involved in the community. Jason spent 4.5 years with Bike Bakersfield, ultimately becoming the executive director for the organization. Continuing the planning path, Jason went on to work for 5.5 years as the planner for the City of Bakersfield. He was recently selected as the city's Housing and Neighborhood Vitality Principal Planner, and in this new role, Jason is committed to incorporating his diverse planning experiences to transform the landscape of affordable housing. In addition to his work experience, Jason also serves as a board member for Bike Bakersfield and Bakersfield Symphony Orchestra, and is an active member of the Rotary Club of Bakersfield Downtown. Above all, Jason chose to raise his family, including his amazing wife and partner, Sandy, and son, Orion, surrounded by the same environment that he's always loved. Having grown up in Bakersfield, he sees his roots in this community as something to be proud of and is driven and energized by the idea of helping to improve the quality of life for everyone who calls Bakersfield their home. Thank you for joining us today, Jason. And last but not least, we have Iranian Molina Reyes, who is the Housing Rehabilitation and Fair Housing Program Supervisor with Kern County's Planning and Natural Resources Department. With over a decade of real estate experience, her desire to help the community led her to study fire technology and the EMT program at Bakersfield College. Her passion for community service continued and she joined Bakersfield Search and Rescue under the Kern County Sheriff's Department 6 years ago. She currently serves as the team's public relations sergeant and has twice received top member recognition. Her current position with Kern County Planning and Natural Resources allows her to work with community organizations to accomplish the program's objectives through mutually beneficial partnerships that enhance program exposure and provide service and resources to Kern residents that need it the most. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Uranium. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the reins over to Heather Kimmel, and she will provide a great presentation for you guys today.
All right, good morning, everyone. bear with me here as I get my presentation up for all of you. Virtual meetings are in conferences. I don't think I'll ever get used to them. And hopefully we're coming out the other side so I don't have to get used to them. Okay, let's see what happens. I clicked the button. What are we seeing on the screen?
We're seeing your desktop, it looks like.
Okay.
There we go.
How about now? Okay.
Perfect.
So just a little bit about the Housing Authority. And now all the people are in front of my presentation. Okay, let me move you guys over there. So the Housing Authority was actually established in Kern County in 1939. I'm not sure many people know that our history goes all the way back that far as being a part of this community. We were originally established by the federal government to be a slum clearance. So, back in the Great Depression era, when we had what we call Hoover camps today, these slums, the government actually came in and built housing for the people who were living in these camps. And so the Housing Authority's original purpose was to create housing for these people. We continued on through World War II, through National Defense Housing Program to create housing to support the military bases throughout Kern County. Continued to house veterans after the war as they came home. We also provided housing for railroad workers who were working on the South Pacific and Santa Fe Railroad. And then started providing housing for migrant farm laborers. The historic Sunset Migrant Labor Camp out in Arvin that was featured in the Grapes of Wrath is actually one of the programs that we started with that we're still operating today. In the 1960s, we expanded into providing rental assistance, which is what we're more known for today. In the 70s, we began adding additional farm worker housing to our portfolio for farm workers that weren't migrant but that lived in our community. In the 80s and 90s, we actually issued millions of dollars in bonds to finance the construction of market rate affordable housing. In the last 2 decades, we've continue to expand on our housing and services to special populations, which include emancipated foster youth, homeless, and veterans. We do have lots of partnerships for the co-location of services at housing sites, including daycares, medical and dental clinics, and family resource centers. So as you can see from our long history in Kern County, we're more than just Section 8 vouchers, which is what I think people most commonly think about when they hear the Housing Authority. We are a public agency that's established by the County of Kern, but we're actually not a county department. We have our own board of commissioners, we have our own legal counsel, auditor, HR department, everything that is very separate from the county. The County Board of Commissioners appoints or the County Board of Supervisors appoints our commissioners, so that's our tie-in back to the county, although we are a separate organization. Some quick facts about us. We have over 200 employees. We're close to 230. We have over 3,000 rental units that we actually either own or manage throughout Kern County. Over 2,000 residents are receiving or participating in supportive services with us. Over 4.6 million households have been provided rental assistance. That massive number, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be 4,600. I'm like, that's not right. 4,600 households are provided rental assistance on an annual basis. We actually issue $27 million per year in rental subsidies that we pay to more than 1,500 landlords in our community. One of our programs is our public housing, low-income public housing. That waiting list has over 22,000 families on it waiting for affordable housing. And lastly, we provide permanent supportive housing to over 2,400 homeless persons in the last 5 years. And we continue to add to that each year by bringing new individuals into housing who have experienced homelessness. So a little bit of a deeper dive into the programs that we operate today. So we have our housing choice voucher. This is what is most commonly referred to as Section 8. I mentioned it just a moment ago. This is where eligible families receive a voucher. Their rent is subsidized. They pay 30% of their income towards that rent, and the voucher pays the difference to the landlord. In order to participate in the program, the landlord's unit has to be considered habitable by a housing quality inspection. So we have to make sure that the unit that the people are using their voucher in meets our basic threshold of what we consider habitable. We also have our low-income public housing. This is a federally funded program. So this is brick and mortar housing developments that are subsidized through HUD. So we have 12 housing developments throughout Kern County. When a tenant lives in one of our low-income public housing developments, they pay 30% of their income as their rent. And then we receive what we call an operating subsidy from HUD to make up the difference of the revenue to make sure that the property is sustainable. There's a minimum rent for low-income public housing of $50 per month. We also have a handful of developments throughout Kern County. A couple, well, one that's just being built right now and another one that just opened. I think Jason's going to touch on that one. For seniors. So the qualifications differ a little bit for each development. There's options for seniors that are 55 and older. Some of the developments you have to be 62 or older. We have one that provides congregate care, so that's light housekeeping services, 3 meals a day through an industrial kitchen. So tenants are determined eligible based on the guidelines at the different developments, but we do have several options within our portfolio for seniors. As I mentioned in our history, we do provide housing to farm workers throughout Kern County. So an eligible applicant has to meet the definition of a domestic farm laborer. Usually that definition is set by USDA. We have 8 developments that are available year-round, and then we have the Sunset Migrant Camp that I mentioned, along with another migrant camp in Shafter. Those camps are open for 6 months out of the year and are restricted to the migrant or seasonal farm laborers. Then we have several other housing developments throughout Kern County that we just call affordable housing. There's no target population, that we're looking to house in these developments. It's just you have to be a low-income household. We would do an income qualification to make sure that you meet the income threshold, and then rent is just set well below market rate. There's no subsidy or assistance with rent. We just keep the rent very affordable and make sure that based on somebody's income, they could afford the rents that we're charging. A big part of what the Housing Authority does is help the community address the homelessness crisis. So we have lots of programs and services for homeless individuals. Anytime a homeless individual is housed within one of our developments or receives a voucher, it always comes with supportive services. We partner with various organizations in the community to do those services for us. Some of those partners include Flood Bakersfield Ministries, the Bakersfield Homeless Center, California Veterans Assistance Foundation, Independent Living Center, and various others. So we work with the coordinated entry system to identify these homeless individuals. We bring them in, make sure they qualify for our program and the assistance, and then they are either given a voucher or they're moved into one of our developments. We also have programs that focus on helping emancipated foster youth. We know that a big feeder into homelessness are those youth that are aging out of foster care and have no other place to go. We have transitional housing for emancipated foster youth ages 18 to 21 who are homeless or at immediate risk of becoming homeless. They're all referred to us through one of the Department of Human Services partner agencies. Usually it's the Dream Center that we're working with for those referrals. And our biggest program that we're operating currently is our rent and utility assistance program. This is, I'm hoping all of you have heard of. This is one of our largest programs to date. It is in size larger than our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher program and our low-income public housing program added together if you look at the funding amount. This is designated to assist renters who were financially impacted during the COVID-19 pandemic. You have to be a renter in Kern County whose income is below 80% of the area median income. And the program can pay for rental arrears and up to 3 months of current rent, utilities, or relocation costs. So the trick here is you can't be over 15 months of total assistance. I think a lot of people heard the state's announcement that the state-run program was ending at the end of March. The state's program is separate from our program. Here in Kern County, we chose to run the program locally and not have the state administer it for us. So although the state's program has stopped accepting applications, our program has not. We are still accepting applications for it. Another big thing that we run here at the Housing Authority is the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. This is available to any of our Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher holders. It's a voluntary program that they can enroll in to help them achieve financial independence within a 5-year period. They're matched up with a service coordinator. They develop this plan and set these goals for over the course of the 5 years. They can reach financial independence. The cool thing about this program is as their income increases and their portion of rent increases, we match that into an escrow account for them. So at the end of the 5 years, when they successfully complete the program, they receive that escrow check. They can use it for really anything that they need. Most people use it to either buy a car, a down payment for a home that they're purchasing, or to pay back maybe student loans for the cost of their education. We've seen people graduate this program with these escrow checks upwards of $20,000. So it's a really neat program for people to enroll in. We also have housing counseling programs. We work with people to become first-time home buyers. We have home buyer counseling, down payment assistance programs, and financial literacy programs. So we're not just working to put people into housing, we're also working with their entire situation. So by the time they no longer need that assistance from us, we've set them on a better path. So that's the Cliff Notes version of everything that the Housing Authority does for our community. So let's talk a little bit more about the purpose for the conference today, that need for affordable housing. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have 22,888 households on our public housing waiting list. This is for our low-income public housing program, but it really demonstrates the need in our community for more affordable housing. People who enter onto that waiting list are likely to be waiting over 10 years before a unit becomes available for them. It really demonstrates just how many people are overly rent burdened in our community and need more affordable options. And the Housing Choice Voucher program, we actually just closed our waiting list a month ago, and we received almost 12,000 applications in a 30-day period for Housing Choice Vouchers. That again demonstrates the need of, in 30 days, that many people applied for financial assistance, tells us how many people are struggling. There's a study that was recently done that showed there was a shortfall of 25,000 affordable homes in Kern County. The study looked at the median income and the median rent prices and came to the conclusion that in order for Kern County to meet the demand of affordable housing based on our community's income, we would have to build almost 26,000 units. That's not a projection over several years. That is to meet demand today. So we can imagine over the course of several years, if we don't figure out how to meet that demand, what's going to happen. The study also demonstrated that 75% of extremely low income households spent more than half of their income on housing, which leaves little money for things like groceries, household items, clothing, or meeting the needs of what their kids require. So there's a direct correlation between a lack of affordable housing and homelessness. When there isn't places for people to live that they can afford, One life crisis will plunge them directly into homelessness for the first time. We can see over the course of several years that the homelessness crisis in our community has just continued to grow. I think anybody who goes out and about to the grocery store or running errands around town can see this with their own eyes. We don't need the numbers to tell us that it's getting worse. But in 2014, we had 1,980 people enter homelessness for the first time. Fast forward to 2019, and that number increases to 3,373. I don't have more recent data, but I know the Homeless Collaborative will be releasing some numbers in the near future. But what I've seen just preliminarily is showing that that number continues to grow. It's not going down. And then you layer the COVID-19 pandemic on top of all of these already underlying issues with affordable housing, and it's no surprise that we're seeing the number increase. So why do we have so many people on our waiting list? Why are the waiting lists, 10 plus years? Part of the problem is that our programs at the Housing Authority, they're not entitlement programs. So you go to the Department of Human Services, you're in need of assistance with food, you qualify for the CalFresh program, you're going to get the assistance. There's no cap on it. With Housing Choice Vouchers, we get a fixed amount of money each year for vouchers, and we can't go over it. And it's not based on how great the need is in our community. So even though we have 11,000 people or households that need the assistance, that doesn't mean that we're going to get more money to provide it. And we have a fixed amount. So of those 11,000 or so people that applied for a Housing Choice Voucher or Section 8 voucher this year, we're likely only going to be able to issue about 400 vouchers throughout the course of the year to them. There's definitely a disconnect between housing costs and income. I briefly mentioned this on the last slide. Since the year 2000, the median home price has increased 182% in Kern County, while the median income level has only increased 61% in Kern County. So we see the inflation of costs going up at this, very fast pace, and income is not keeping up with it. So that creates this gap of rent burden and means that what was affordable housing in the past isn't affordable today because these prices are increasing and income is not. And then there's just insufficient housing production statewide. It's not a Kern County problem, not a Bakersfield problem. It is a state of California problem. And I know that our local officials are working hard to find solutions for. So what is Housing Authority doing to try and increase the stock of affordable housing in Kern County? Lots of things. So here's a couple of our developments that we have. Well, before I jump into our developments, I just want to talk briefly about why it's so hard to build affordable housing and why we can't just stand up those 26,000 units that study showed that we need. To develop affordable housing, it's a very competitive process. You usually have to apply for 2 to 3 different types of funding in order to bring a development together. It requires experience and substantial pre-development costs. You have to go to the state of California and apply for tax credits. It's a very technical and complex thing to do. You can't just go to a vacant plot of land and think you're going to throw up some units. You have to go through many steps before you can even start building. In Kern County, there has been by the Housing Authority, over 1,300 units developed since 2005. These units have been developed as new construction, where we build from the ground up, or as acquisition rehab, where we buy something that exists and we rehabilitate it. We currently have 411 units under construction. And I think since I put this slide together a couple of weeks ago, that number's actually increased. So they're either under construction or they're going to start in the next 60 days. Okay, now some pictures of the developments we have. So this is Almond Village. This is one of our developments in Lost Hills. We actually partnered with the wonderful company to bring the funding that was needed together for this development. This is one of our sites that we have for farm laborers. This is Park 20th here in Bakersfield. It's on 20th Street, hence the name. And this is an affordable housing development where we have units that are for homeless veterans and other homeless individuals in our community. This was actually an award-winning design. The architect that put this together for us did a great job. We have our residences at Old Town Kern. This is one of our low-income public housing sites. So that waiting list of 22,000 people, when they're pulled from the list, this is one of the 12 developments that they could be offered. We have Rosalita Village. This is in Wasco. This is replacement housing for the old USDA farm labor housing that was in Wasco. It was right by the railroad tracks. The high-speed rail was projected to come right next to it, which was going to be a significant impact in the noise for the tenants that lived there. So we partnered with the city of Wasco. We took down the old housing and we built this replacement housing for them. And this is also housing for farm laborers. Then we have Mountain View Village in Lamont. This is the first new housing development, affordable housing development in Lamont for, if my memory serves me right, it was like 20 years. There just hadn't been housing production in Lamont because of some water use issues. So the city was able to work with us to overcome that, and we were able to bring the first new housing development to Lamont in quite some time. So this is one of our sites that's just affordable housing. There's no other requirements other than being low income. One of our newest sites, residences at East Hill. This went up on a vacant parcel of land on Bernard Street across from what used to be the East Hills Mall. And we're really proud of this one. It's a really cool design. We have 80 units there. Half of those are for veterans, and the other half are just for low-income individuals. This one was a really hard build because it sits on top of a hill. And so you had to think about how do you stabilize the ground and have the water runoff issues. And it was a really tricky thing to figure out how to build on this site. And then we also had delays because there was a family of kit foxes that decided to have their little den at the construction site. So we had to wait a while before we could build. And then lastly, our infill housing. This is a newer concept that we're partnering with the city of Bakersfield on, where we find these smaller lots throughout the city that are zoned for housing that we can build these little cottages on. They're really cute. It's a very efficient way to build, and it's a nice way to bring housing stock to Kern County and to the city of Bakersfield on just vacant lands that are sitting there not being used. Okay, that is the conclusion of my presentation, and I think I heard Cassie say we're going to do questions at the end. So I will hold questions until she opens it up for that. I hope that you guys learned something about the Housing Authority that you didn't know before. And I hope that you have a better understanding of the affordable housing need in our community. Thank you so much for inviting me to present.
Thank you, Heather. That was very great information. I'm going to go ahead and pass the reins over to Jason now, who will present some information with the city of Bakersfield.
And I don't know how to bring my presentation down.
No worries, Heather. It should be gone once Jason takes over.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. I should be up. Cassie, am I projecting my screen, if you will?
Yep. Great job.
Perfect. Thank you. And I apologize to everyone if in my webcam the lighting's a little different. I think we've all in this COVID world and now getting out of COVID world understand the personal issues we run into when we're doing hybrid or online events. I was in my study. My wife is out here. Actually, our son is sick, so I'm working at home today, and we're swapping, watching him. And our internet decided to get shaky, if you will. So so we had to quickly do a switch around. So I'm now in our living room using the back wall as a backdrop. So I apologize if the lighting's a little dimmer. My wife's job actually requires her to do a number of online training. She works for Common Spirit Health, and so she has this whole light system set up that really captures things well, and then because of the internet to come out here. But I'm excited to be here today. Thank you all for being here. Heather, thank you for your presentation. GBLA, thank you for putting this together. And as I mentioned earlier, my name is Jason Cater. I'm a principal planner with the City of Bakersfield, focusing on affordable housing projects and also neighborhood vitality. I'm going to present to you guys a little today about our efforts in order to increase affordable housing. And I think similar to what Heather was really mentioning, we really, in our section, are invested on the production side of this project and this equation. We do have other programs that look at things like home buyer assistance and ways to help people achieve that gap of getting to where they can purchase a home or can afford to rent a home. But to a lot of what Heather mentioned, so we may have some repeats, and I'll go through that quickly. But really, what we've seen in the last few years, and even before COVID, was the need to produce more housing units. Pre-COVID, really looking at this idea of production, the City of Bakersfield, looking at national averages, was actually underproducing in order to keep up with the cost of growth, families, households, and subsequently what happens when you have more households competing for limited availability is the cost will rise. We saw in 2017 to 2021, again, 2021 being a year of COVID, for home ownership and sales prices, we saw an increase of about 53% in the home purchase price. That number in 2022 has likely gone up maybe 10 to 14%. And so we're continuing to see housing costs rise. Through the pandemic, we also saw a lot of impacts to the construction industry. Construction costs went up, supply chain issues. All of this has really led to the implications of availability and a lack of units being available. So when we look at the city's role in this process, we have two things. My team's really focused on the financing side and really looking at the groups like the Housing Authority, working with people like some of our private affordable housing developers who build units with deed restrictions to help people at very low or low income levels get into affordable housing. And then also on the policy side, now we're seeing a lot more activity at the state level, which we'll touch on briefly on how to look at ways to backlog this production gap. And so just quickly, when we talk about affordability, what is housing affordability? So generally, the concept of housing affordability is that people should spend about 30% of their income or less on housing. And so once someone passes that plane and gets into the 30 to 50% of their household income being spent on rent or home ownership, they're considered to be cost burdened. And so they're paying more money than they should be to maintain. As Heather talked about earlier, money for transportation, groceries, other things that people need in order to sustain their quality of life and other items. And then extreme cost burden is where someone spends more than 50% of their income on housing. So these are two ways we look at the implications of what happens when housing is at a cost that is not necessarily meeting its line share, if you will, of someone's household budget. In turn, it's taking more money and in turn taking away resources for other things such as food, transportation, and other items people need to sustain their quality of life. And so in addition to some of what Heather mentioned with the lack of affordable housing financing that we've seen, we've also just seen a general underproduction and its implications on cost burden. So as we produce less units, we see the cost of housing rise in terms of in relation to people's incomes. Looking at some data from 2017, the CHAS is the Community Housing Affordability Strategy. It comes from HUD. Bakersfield, about 36% of our households are currently considered cost burden. So they're paying more than 30% of their income towards either homeownership or renting. And when you look at some of the numbers, people of color are more likely to be cost burdened than non-people of color in Bakersfield. People who are renting are more likely to be cost burdened than people who are in homeownership. And then that last piece, you can see quite a significant jump. People who are considered to be very low income or moderate income are way more likely to be cost burden in terms of their rent levels than people who are above moderate levels. And so a lot of that really is driven by the market and where we see a lot of private development going. So when we look at the affordable housing basics, again, I think Heather, you mentioned a lot of this with income levels and also looking at special or specific populations who often find themselves burdened by housing costs. Our goal with our programs and a lot of our strategies is to look at how do we bring things towards that metric of ensuring people pay no more than 30% of their gross income for housing costs, utilities. And then when we look at these programs specifically, we also have processes where we look at things like how do we support veterans, how do we work with people who are experiencing homelessness, groups like farm workers, people who often find themselves in these arenas to be cost burdened. So a lot of our work, which we'll get into, really is going to look at the financing side of this equation. So briefly, when we talk about these numbers, what are the numbers of extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income? And so for percentages purposes, extremely low income is 30% of the area median income. So they take a number based on the household size and a number to say this is what, a household of one is $55,000 a year. And then they take percentages of that to kind of set these thresholds for what is extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income. So very low, you're looking at about half the median income. Low is about 80% of the area median income, and moderate's about 120. And so you can see some of these numbers here as in terms of household size and these income levels. This affects people who are coming out of homelessness up to maybe even households that have a one income earner who's a teacher. And so these thresholds cover a vast swath of our community when we talk about housing affordability and most importantly ensuring people have access to affordable housing. So what's our role in this? Heather just mentioned a lot about their development activity. The Housing Authority, in addition to running the vouchers, they also build a lot of units. The city's focus in this is really to provide a lot of what's called gap financing. And so within that, the city receives federal funds, state funds, and in recent years with the passage of Measure N is also administering local funding to provide gap financing to help these projects succeed. Now, Heather talked about a lot of the complexities with getting some of these larger complexes developed. What you'll see oftentimes with these projects is there's probably 4 or 5 different funding sources that are in the project and helping it be developed. Those gap financing sources usually make up 2 or 3 of those sources. And so the more money the city has to kind of be the first funder and to say, yeah, we're supportive of this project, we're going to invest in this project, the more it helps these developers like the Housing Authority, like Chelsea Investment Corporation, who built a lot of the Mill Creek corridor. It helps them to move these complexes through the process, get to the final stage, which is usually tax credits, and then go to construction. And then in turn for that, we record a covenant and deed of trust against the property to ensure that rents for our units are at certain levels for a certain period of time. Oftentimes when we leverage other sources like tax credits, sources from the state, from the federal government, they all bring in their covenants and their restrictions as well. And so what you have is a quality development that provides that stable housing, but then also has a long period of time where the tenants there are going to have to meet certain income thresholds, and then the rents cannot exceed certain levels that are deemed affordable for those income levels. And so that's where a lot of our work has been, and we're going to talk today about kind of the changes that the city's seeing as we look at the impacts of COVID, but also as we've looked at some of these ongoing issues, as Heather mentioned, with needing to develop more affordable housing units. And then also in recent years, we began working on the programmatic level to look at ways to spur housing production, and then also are looking at ways to look at policy as part of the upcoming general plan update that we'll talk about briefly. So today's topic, more than words. This slide here, I think, kind of shows what we're seeing at the city level. Heather really talked about this production over the, since 2005, 1,300 units have been developed. If you took those units and you laid them out over years, which we will do in the next slide, you'll see through the 2000s there was quite a large swath of development in Bakersfield, in Kern County as well. A lot of that driven by funding options, redevelopment funding, which the city had through 2012, But then after 2012, when the redevelopment agencies dissolved, when a lot of the state legislation, other efforts kind of dwindled the funding source availability for those units, we saw kind of a dip in these deed restricted units being developed. And so for the city of Bakersfield, what that looked like on our end is that in 2018, we had one source of funding that was being given to the city on an annual basis to do affordable housing development. That was the Home Investment Partnership Program. This program comes from the Department of Housing and Urban Development and helps to provide funding for a variety of housing programs, either rental construction, down payment assistance. You can also look at tenant-based rental assistance types programs. But this gives the city flexibility to get into that arena for affordable housing development and investments. Since that time, though, you can see how this matrix has grown, the number of sources that we're looking at getting. In 2019, when Measure N passed in 2018, the first allocation of Measure N funds came in July of 2019. In that investment, the city got about $4.7 million to use as gap financing for affordable housing. So right there, combined with our home project, we quadrupled our money in a year, and that sustained through 2020. Now the state has also, in their recognition of the need for more affordable housing, has developed a permanent local housing allocation program, and so the city is now getting additional funding through that program. Home ARP came as a part of the COVID response funds through the federal government, but also in looking at this, you look at 2021 and 2022, you see a large growth in our financing. And I think one of the things to reflect on this is two of those sources that we haven't mentioned yet, local housing trust funds. So the cities in 2021 established a housing trust fund in order to help bring in more resources to continue to grow this pot of money that can help these units develop. Again, a lot of our role being gap financing. With the passage of Measure N and those resources, we were able to use that funding as a match leverage for the local housing trust fund, which is a requirement to access those resources. And through having those funds, we were able to go out and secure an additional $3 million for affordable housing development. So that really grew as a result of the city's commitment locally to investing money from Measure N to do more affordable housing development. And I think looking at the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, I noted that this reflects a portion of the first installment of $47 million the city received from ARPA. So during 2021, the city and many local and state governments across the country received ARPA funding to essentially help address the impacts of COVID. There were about 6 different program areas those dollars could be used for: infrastructure, health access, housing, a myriad of things. The city has committed so far in its first allocation of $47 million of those funds, about $10 million of that, or almost a quarter of all the funds, to helping to invest in affordable housing development. So the city is really, at this point, seeing the need for affordable housing and really seeing our role rev up in terms of how we're going to help to invest in these units, like what Heather and the Housing Authority built, like Chelsea, like a number of our wonderful community partners out there in the community who work on these issues. And so I think this chart also reflects this discussion we had about production and the redevelopment era dissolving. Again, 2013 to 2015, you're seeing low and very low income units. Those are the top 2 lines. Those were really continuations of redevelopment, which dissolved in 2012. But the city still had housing asset funds to deploy for those projects. And then from there was this gap. Getting into year 8 and 9, you're seeing a significant increase. A lot of that really on the back of public safety vital services funds as gap financing, and an increase in these resources and interests that we're seeing. The increase in investment from the state and the federal government level as well to really produce more housing. So with that, Heather talked about a few of these projects, but I'm going to run through some additional things that are on the horizon. So a lot of, I think, what we just saw with Heather are projects that have been completed. So we're going to look at some that we have in the pipe, as well as some that are coming down in the future. So the first project here, Heather mentioned East Hills, 81 unit housing complex near the East Hills Mall, the former East Hills Mall, 44 units reserved for veteran households. The city used its gap financing to help assist in this project's development, and it was completed at the end of the year, adding 81 units to our inventory. Through PSBS, we assisted the housing or Golden Empire Affordable Housing Incorporated, a local nonprofit that is sponsored by the Housing Authority, in acquiring Westchester Senior Village, which was the former Decatur Hotel, to rehab and restore that or rehabilitate that property and continue its use to serve very low-income seniors. And so that's a 27-unit complex that was just completed about a month ago. We also invested in the 22nd Street Loft project. It's a 20-unit complex on 22nd and Q that is leveraging low-income housing tax credits as well as multi-family housing program to the state of California to build 20 units of housing. This is an interesting site here. It's actually about a quarter of an acre or less, so it's a very compact site, but it's about 2 blocks over from the Mill Creek and is going to really serve a need that's much needed. Most of the seniors living here actually are going to be extremely low income. So these are people over the age of 62 who make, $12,000 or $13,000 a year or less. We also, on the pipe right now, we've started grading for the 6th Street Apartments. This is a 40-unit complex that leveraged $1 million of public safety and vital services funds to build a lot of the cottages, similar style to what you saw in Heather's infill program earlier. And this will actually be leveraging home key funds. And so these units will be reserved for individuals transitioning out of homelessness. There will be 40 units on this complex, 41 bedrooms, and we'll fill in a nice component of that quarter there that's had some vacant lots for years. This project, I was really hoping to say this, but I don't think I can say it yet because I can't see my emails, but I was hoping to say this project officially closed today because we're supposed to close today. But this is Sagewood Apartments. So this complex here is being developed by Chelsea Investment Corporation and Pacific Southwest Community Development Corporation. They're a group out of San Diego who built a lot of our Mill Creek projects. This is a 72-unit affordable housing complex on the northeast corner of Stein and Berkshire. And these units are going to be reserved to farm worker housing families. So these will have a variety of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 72 units in total, and the families that live there will be low income and very low income households. Some units also for extremely low income, and someone in the family will be employed in the ag industry. So this complex is supposed to break ground shortly. As I said earlier, I've been getting emails back and forth from all the financiers. We should be closing today, and then going to construction in May or June. And looking ahead, we also have the Renaissance at Baker project. The city's contribution about $3.5 million into this project, a mixture of home, PSBS, and the city owned the land. This is the old Baker and Kentucky site. And this is a rendering at this time. The applicants are the Cesar Chavez Foundation, who's partnering with the Housing Authority of the County of Kern. This complex will be an 85-unit mixed-use complex with 5,000 square feet of commercial retail space on the bottom floor. The intention for that space this time is to be a community space with a focus on job creation, job placement, and job education. And so that's what the front space will be there. And then the above source will be for housing. This project received an award of Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Funds, or AHSC, through the Strategic Growth Council in January, which we're excited about because that program, one, has a lot of access to resources to develop affordable housing. Number two, it also has a focus on kind of a cohesive investment and development around these complexes. So not just building the units, but there's also a component of active transportation, public transportation improvements, urban greening. So this project will also incorporate some bike facility and pedestrian facility improvements, some urban greening, so some more trees along the landscapes around the facility, and then some enhancements to some of the local transit system to serve the project. So I want to go back to this because you see that we've got a number of projects, and I think what we're excited about and what I'm excited about today when we talk about the housing production side is when you look at this chart here, I think a lot of the work you're seeing in those numbers, in the RENA numbers, but also in this project list, reflect investments in 2019 and 2020, because again, as I think Heather alluded to, the affordable housing development process can be a long process. And so you could be looking at getting your commitments in 1 year and then going through the environmental, through the tax credit cycle competition, through permitting and development, you may be building a year or two down the road. And so I think a lot of the work we're seeing, or this uptick in these projects that we're seeing on our end, really reflects the 2019 and 2020 investments that we made into housing thus far. And so I think looking ahead through 2022, 2023, these numbers of these dollars we're seeing from 2021 and 2022 are only going to continue to add to those units. Again, I think as Heather mentioned, we have a severe underdevelopment of low and very low income units in this community. And again, looking back at our earlier slide, cost burden, it's no surprise then that without those deed restricted units, a lot of the cost burden is ultimately shifting to those lower income levels. With these resources that we're committing, our goal is to really ramp up and improve this unit production using deed restrictions, working with developers like the Housing Authority, Chelsea, and others who work in this arena, to continue to really bring in these resources to our community to help really meet that need. So I think, again, we've got a significant pipeline going, and I think we're going to continue to see that pipeline grow as we continue to get these resources in and get them out to our development community. So I mentioned two pieces of our activity as a city. We look at the brick and mortar finance side, and in our section, we're also looking now more into the policy side of what we're doing in terms of enhancing and increasing production. So right now, the city is going through an affordable housing strategy development, which is really a production-based focus of tools and resources that we can use to help spur the growth of deed restricted as well as market unit developments, to get more inventory online, again, deed restricted, to help with low and very low income housing stability, but then also to look at softening that growth in terms of just the underproduction and its impact to people's access to affordable housing. And so we do have a community meeting coming up that is planned for the end of this month. We will be getting some information on that shortly to kind of go over some of these tools and resources. We'd love to have you all there. I know many of you on the call. I can't see the attendees, but I see about 109 people on this call today. So we have gone through some outreach, some surveying online. We had some community workshops, so I hope many of you have participated in this process. But we will have a meeting coming shortly as well to kind of roll out the presentation of some of these tools that we're looking at. But within this, we're looking at a number of different processes of how do we help spur production. So without getting too into the details today, just some high levels. We are continuing the growth of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund and looking at ways to bring in more resources to grow that pie, if you will, to develop more units. We're looking at things like impact fee mitigation programs, or how do we look at ways to revive our impact fee process to spur more housing growth. We are developing an accessory dwelling unit program really to spur on the growth and development of ADUs, which I'll touch on briefly, and developing some policy tools like a site inventory and analysis tool. We can look at policy implications on housing production development. Also, we can look at evaluating how different resources compete for affordable housing funding, and look at where the best sites are that we can use for these resources to really maximize our unit potential. So within this, there's a couple of items I want to talk on. Again, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is something we're really excited about, continuing to grow the amount of money that we can use to deploy for affordable housing. As we mentioned earlier, the city did receive a $3 million grant from the state through the Local Housing Trust Fund program to help grow that gap financing. Again, right on the backside of our PSVS investment of $5 million. But this is one way we think we can work to really bring in more resources to grow that pie, while also looking at other ways to continue to grow that investment arm. One strategy that may not involve the city as much, maybe more as a partner for guidance. But one thing we're also looking at this is the possibility of CDFI, who can maybe look at getting private donations to help invest in affordable housing and building that partnership. So this is something that we think will really help grow that our resources to then invest in more units going forward. Accessory dwelling unit programs, accessory dwelling units, also sometimes known as granny units. These are smaller units that can be built either in the back as attached or detached to an existing home. that basically create more units. The state has really made a lot of legislation and push to really streamline and incentivize the growth of ADUs. And so the city is looking right now through this process at developing a number of different resources. First, a marketing and ADU workbook to help take some of the guessing game out of developing an ADU in the city, out of the process to help inform the public about that development process. We're also exploring things like financial incentives. And so in this case, I think similar to what we've seen with some of our larger projects, we would be investing probably smaller grants to develop, to help with the construction cost to build these facilities. And then also looking at things like a pre-approved ADU plans where you have access to plans that have already been approved, gone through site plan review, building department, and are kind of like over the counter or off the shelf plans that people can access through, and whether that's through an online gallery where we can connect people with architects, or the city is looking at possibly purchasing the license fee so people can just simply come and pull the plan. The goal is to kind of reduce that cost for the design process and also the guessing game, and provide a small financial incentive to help really increase the use of development of ADUs. And so I have the link down there, BakersfieldHousingStrategy.com, if you guys want more information. Again, meeting coming soon. More discussion about the different tools coming at that meeting as well. And then briefly, I think I'm running a little over time, so I'll touch on this briefly, but this is another really important concept that our staff's involved in, although our planning department's handling most of it. The city's last comprehensive general plan update was probably in the early 2000s, 2002, I believe, was the last time a full comprehensive plan was done. So it's been 20 years. A lot has changed, and we're looking now, working with a group called Rincon Consultants to update the general plan, which is effectively a guidebook or a guidance document for how the city is going to grow, invest, and develop in the next 20 to 23 years. And so a lot of this plan is also focused on the housing element, which is one of the 8 mandatory components of the general plan that looks at the housing process and the policies and growth, and covers and is updated. Actually, this element's actually updated every 8 years to account for what's called the regional housing needs assessment cycle. And we are going to be, I think, part of this process. It's not just locally. I know Heather talked about a lot of the local numbers, but really looking across the state, a number of jurisdictions are seeing the impact of underproduction, as well as the lack of access to affordable housing as issues that the cities need to address. And so as the state is looking at local municipalities to really address these issues, the RHNA and the housing element are going to be much more of a focus for that process with the state. And so I encourage you all, I can't encourage you enough to Bakersfield2045.com. Check out the page, get involved. This is about a 1.5 year long process, so a lot is going to be going into to making this plan, to improving it. But there is quite a, within that, just current draft numbers at this time, the state is looking at Bakersfield to be able to plan for the growth about 37,500 units in the next 8 years to help maintain affordability levels as well as production levels. So a lot of different policies and items to go into that. And so I can't encourage you all again enough. This is going to be a great process. So certainly after today, Bakersfield Reyes, Bakersfield2045.com. Get involved. I can also answer any questions anyone might have, or refer you all to the planning department to kind of get involved in that process. And I think with that concludes our portion, Cassie. So I will turn it back over to you.
Jason, that was a lot of great information, a lot to share for the both. But I do want to go ahead. Please hang out just a little bit longer. We are slightly over time, but we want to make sure that we hear from Kern County and their efforts. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Iranian Molina Reyes, and she's going to go over what the County of Kern is doing for housing. So I'm going to go ahead and share that screen, and you can get started anytime you're ready.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jason and Heather, for all of that very thorough information, and it's so informative. I appreciated it. I learned a ton. My name is Iranian Molina Reyes, And I am here from Kern County Planning Department, Community Development and Fair Housing, just to present two of our wonderful programs that we have available for our community, especially those in great need, such as persons with disabilities. That would be the first program. It's called the Home Access Program. This program is for accessibility improvements, such as, getting the ADA toilet, grab bars in the shower and around the bathroom, widening doors, ramps with handrails if needed, replacing your bathtub for an accessible shower. This can just help the residents have more accessibility and have independency around their own homes. It is for physical disabled people living in low income households. Income verification is required. And let's see. Thank you. All right. So these programs are for rental properties, owner occupied or tenant occupied, obviously. It could be a family residence, condominiums, mobile home, manufactured home, apartments. If you are a renter at a place and you need this access program, we will have to get written ownership permission to move forward with the construction and changes in the home or the upgrades in the home. Go to the next slide, if you don't mind for me, Cassie. Thank you. So like I said, it's just the purpose of this grant, the home access grant, is to make the residents be more accessible for the persons with permanent physical disabilities. And it is up to $4,500 that would allow us to do some construction. Unfortunately, 45 grant can only get us so far, but we will do the best and the most needed items in the bathroom or in the home for better accessibility. Who qualifies? Any person who's diagnosed with a permanent disability, a low-income household, and it has to be within Kern County entitlement jurisdiction. The Bakersfield City also has a very similar program, and if you end up contacting our office, we have a really good partnership going on with Bakersfield City and their technicians. So she refers us people when she gets someone who's within our jurisdiction, and we forward information to her of those who contact us who live in the city. So don't be shy to call us. We will partner you up with someone that can assist you with this program. Permanent physical disability. The applicant must have a permanent physical disability that restricts the access to and around the residence. This has to be attested by your physician. And the primary physician has to complete one of the forms that is included in our application. And just like any other low-income program, we have to have households who are low income and meet the median income limits. They should not exceed 80% of the household median income established by HUD. And to determine the household income, we have to have proof of income, such as bank statements or any letters from any SSI, SSA, and it'll be for all residents in the home. And that includes children's, if they have any income coming in. The Kern County entitlement jurisdictions, there is the unincorporated areas of Kern County, and our current cooperative agreement cities are California City, Ridgecrest, Shafter, and Tehachapi. But like I said, the Bakersfield City does have a program very similar to ours, and we would just refer you to them if you end up calling our department. Unfortunately, I have not heard anything from Wasco or any other city, McFarland. They don't have the program, and we're hoping that soon they'll become part of these cooperative agreement cities so that we can also provide this great service to them. Like I was saying, the accessibility improvements could include the widening of the doors for those who use a wheelchair, or a ramp, or the walkers also, because sometimes they're just too narrow. Grab bars in the bathroom, handicap accessible toilets, which means just a little taller than what the normal is. Replace the tub with accessible walk-in showers and retractable shower seats. And here are some examples of the things that we have done. The one on the left, it's the before picture with a bathroom that had a tub. And the new one on the right, we installed the walk-in shower, the seat, the shower head, the bars. Another one of our programs with Kern County Planning is the Housing Rehabilitation Loan Program. Now, this is a these are just for improvements in the home when the person is unable to afford to repair them. Again, it also applies to county entitlement jurisdictions. It is a zero interest deferred payment loan, and they have to qualify on the same medium. They have to meet the medium of low income. The housing rehabilitation could include things such as window repairs, carpets, anything that's out of pretty much old and it needs to be up to code could be included in these repairs. It improves the standards of level of living conditions for the occupants in the dwelling in the units. The upgrade, that appearance of the neighborhood, and it prolongs the economy life of household units, eliminates conditions of deferred maintenance and lessens future needed for maintenance, and improve energy efficient, which at the long run also helps you with your electricity bill, all of your utility bills. The improvements, like I was saying, air conditioning, heater, roof, plumbing, flooring, windows, insulation, painting, and if anything is out of code, we would have to bring those up to code. And again, just to say, zero interest and deferred payment loans for those who qualify for that. What type of properties qualify? Well, it has to be owner occupied, and it includes single family residence, condominiums, manufactured homes, and mobile homes. How does the program work? There is a maximum amount available on the equity of the home, and we would have to have proof that the property actually meets those, that it has some equity in order for us to move forward. The maximum amount, it's 90% in a single home, and residents should not exceed 80% on the mobile home and manufactured homes. County will secure a first and second mortgage position by recording a deed of trust on the property to ensure that the county's interest in the loan, of course, and the payments, monthly payments can be made and the balance paid in full at any time. There is no penalty if they want to do that ahead of the, the amount of years that they get the loan for. There's no interest. It's deferred payment loan. It's if the person is eligible for a renewal, and they have to renew it every 5 years. So every 5 years we have to go through that same process, do the qualifications, make sure that they remain low income, and that way they can still do the no interest. Provided that the household meets all of the loan requirements, then we renew the 5-year. Minimum qualifications: the applicant must be the homeowner. The residence has to be within the entitlement jurisdiction of Kern County, and it has to be obviously a low income household. All of the people living in the home, again, if there's a mom and a dad and 3 sons who are over 18 with a job, then we'll have to take in consideration everybody's income in the property. And then there has to be a $400 monthly discretionary income from the homeowner. Again, the applicant has to be the homeowner, and the residence has to be located in Kern County entitlement jurisdiction. They have to occupy the property the entire time the loan is going on. So if the person moves out, then at that point, we have to pay the loan in full. The mobile homes are required registration card to be current. they are required to have their insurance policies current while they have this loan. The unincorporated areas of Kern County and current cooperative agreement cities are California City, Ridgecrest Chapter, and Tehachapi. The households must be low income. Again, every 5 years, we will be checking on that when we renew these loans. They have to have a 400 remaining discretionary income. And they cannot exceed the 80% of the household median income, which establishes the low income part of it. That is to decrease the risk of default after all the monthly credit debts are paid, and applicants should have that remaining $400. This is just to ensure applicants have enough money to pay for food, utilities, property taxes, and homeowners insurance. And from the time that the application is received, it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months for a case to be finished. And this applies to both, to the home access and to the home rehabilitation. Take in consideration, just a little side note, that due to the increment in prices of construction material, this is keeping us in that, extending us to the maximum of the 6 months, sometimes going even a little bit over that. But the quicker we get the documentation in and updated documents as we go, as far as proof of income, then the faster we move, and hopefully we can get it done. The target is to finish them before that, of course, but you bear with us. we want to get this program out there. We want to make sure that all the residents in Kern County who are able and qualify for these wonderful programs are able to do it. So we'll work with you as much as possible. Give us a call. There's Candy Mosqueda. She is the tech that does the process from beginning to end. She's wonderful. She accommodates. So please give her a call, email her. You can also call me and email me, and we'll get you going with your application. Like I said, the faster the better, so that we can get everybody that needs to be involved as far as licensed constructors and all the reports that we need to get your construction up and running is done as soon as possible. The application, usually we send it to you with an envelope that's already pre-labeled with our address, but here it is. And hopefully if you keep this PowerPoint, you can just keep that and send us a letter, send us back the application, email me, I'll send you one. However, fax, if you want me to mail it, I'll do that. We really want everybody to take advantage of it. And that will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Cassie, for putting this together, and GBLA. Great information from everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you to everyone to hanging out with us a little bit longer. I hope you found some great information. Heather, Jason, Iranian, thank you so much for sharing what you guys are doing. This was totally a play on words. More than words was the session theme, and we wanted to share with the community and our community partners that you guys are actively doing something to help with this crisis of affordable housing. As we all know, the less housing options that we have, the more likely discrimination is to occur. So the more people we can get into homes, particularly with the affordable housing, the less likely discrimination will occur, which is better for all of us. So I do not currently see any questions in the questions box nor the chat box. I don't at this time see any attendees with their hands up. So I'll give a couple more moments just to see if anybody has anything. If at any point you do find that you have a question that came from these presentations, please feel free to reach out to me directly. You guys should all have my email with that mass email reminders that went out. And I could definitely forward it to the individual we're doing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's session 2, More Than Words at the Fair Housing Conference. Please join us next week for session 3, Won't You Be My Neighbor? We have 2 individuals from Suffolk University who will go a bit more into the historical nature of the Fair Housing Act and how we came to be, and really kind of discuss how, even though redlining is now legal, it still happens, and we're going to just dissect that a little bit more and share. So what we can all do as individuals, what we can all do to make everyone feel welcome. So again, session 3, Won't You Be My Neighbor, next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thank you all so much for joining us. Our guest speakers, again, great information. We'll see you all next week.
Cassie, I do have a quick question for Heather.
Yes.
I couldn't raise my hand on the computer. I'm not sure why. This is Yarania. Question on the housing, the application for the housing assistance, the rent assistance program, I'm sorry. How long or until when are you guys gonna stop receiving applications? We do get a few phone calls on our fair housing line here that it's always a question. How long can I still apply? That question is always up.
Sure. So we're actually reviewing all of the applications and the data right now to set the date. We don't have a date set yet. We expect that sometime this summer is when we will stop accepting applications. So the best advice is just to encourage everybody, if there's a need, to get their application in now and not wait. Once we do identify that date, we're going to be giving lots of public notice. So hopefully everybody will be very aware of that before it happens.
Wonderful. And on your housing choice voucher, you mentioned there is the wait list. Well, there was 10,000 applicants, and that there was a wait list. How long would that wait list be kept with Housing Authority, or when would these applications will reopen?
Yeah, great question. So previously, we would not open the list again until we exhausted everybody that had applied. We're seeing that is very problematic because now that we got to the end of the old list, which had opened in 2012, people's situations are so different than when they applied in 2012. So we've made the decision to open the list every year. So if people are not selected from this list, they'll have to reapply again to stay on the list. So every year around January, you'll see notices that the list will be opening up again, and so new people can be added. Existing people would apply again.
And this will be only online applications again?
Correct. That's what we're looking at right now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And we actually have some questions, so if you guys can hang out a tad bit longer. The first one is for Jason. The question is this funding only available to agencies like the Housing Authority, or can private developer contractors or businesses apply for the funding to build affordable housing? And where do you find the qualifications and requirements needed to apply?
A great question. Yeah, so it's not just the Housing Authority. We do open it up to private developers as well. And so we have a notice funding available that goes out every year when we are doing a call for projects. So if the individual is asking the question wants to connect with me, I'd be happy to get him on that list. But no, it goes through a NOFA process. We do, as part of the process, look for some experience, some of the complexity of the project you're looking to apply for, but the funds are open, and as part of the ADU process and others, we're looking for ways to, just as I mentioned, finance what the Housing Authority's model is, also looking down to ways that are more simplified. So, but it is an open process, and I'm happy to talk to anyone that's interested in the field. So.
Awesome. And then we have another. Keith, I see that your hand is raised. I have unmuted you, so you're welcome to ask your question.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you have to be a U.S. citizen to avail yourself of any of these offers?
Great question. So I think maybe each of you might have a response for that.
Yeah, so for Housing Authority, it depends on the program you're applying for. We have several housing developments and programs where you do not have to have citizenship status, but then there's others that you do. So for the Section 8 program, the head of household has to have citizenship status, but for the RUP program, we don't even ask the question about citizenship status. So for us, it really just depends on what assistance you're trying to access.
Thank you.
Yeah, and similar to a lot of our programs, it's going to come down to the funding program, and really for us, a lot of it at that level is implemented by people like Heather or our developers. So, I mean, similar answer. It really just depends on the program and those processes. So.
I only brought this question up because of the reporting on the television that we could have upwards of 500,000 new people per month because of Title 42, and that's a tremendous amount of people, a million every 2 months. And housing is short. Something has to be done. I thank you for the answers.
All right, so I'm just going to do a quick, Iranian, did you want to respond to the question as well?
Well, yes, sure. I have both of our programs, the home access and the home improvement, are actually available for non-citizens. There's a difference between a citizen and a lawful permanent resident. So depending on where in the status, immigration status they are, these per HUD sections are allowed, 214 are allowed to apply. Obviously, if they are qualified to get a loan to purchase a home, most likely their status would be fine. But we in case, and I'm not sure that anybody's familiar with this, but if anybody who does not have a legal status who applies for any federal funding programs, maybe, and they want to maybe check with a lawyer, but they may be some restrictions on their process with immigration if they are in the process of legalizing their status. So check with a lawyer that's an immigration professional that can tell you more specifications about it. But our program states that you don't have to be a U.S. citizen, but you could be a resident and still qualify for the home improvement and the home access program.
Again, thank you also.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm just doing one final check to make sure we don't have any raised hands or any questions in the box. Okay, so does it look like we have anything? Again, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And if for the audience, if you do have any questions that you thought of, feel free to reach out to us here at GBLA directly to myself or any of our departments, and we will definitely forward the question to the appropriate presenter. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.